Awesome. Hello. Welcome. So many new friends. Oh, sorry. Thought I told it not to shut down. Epic start. Yes, welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So this talk is about CSS, web. I think I was moved from C3 to here. So if you're expecting something other than web, it's okay to leave. But it will be more fun if you stay, I promise. You having a good Jfokus so far? Yes. Awesome. It's my first time here. Super excited to be here. My name is Andreas Wänqvist. I'm a Microsoft MVP. Please don't hit me. I don't do a lot of Java stuff. I haven't coded Java for ages. I used to be a hardcore Android developer when cell phones came out. I thought it was really cool, but that was a long time ago. Nowadays I do AI, loads of AI. I have been the web architect at our cool company called Voyado. But I have to confess, web is actually just a hobby nowadays. I'm also part of the Aurelia core team. Anyone heard about Aurelia, the web framework? 2 people. Come up later. See me after the talk. You can have stickers if you want to. Awesome. Is this? No, I don't have one. Oh, that was new computer. Yeah, I'm not a designer, as you will see. I do like CSS. I think it's fun, but I don't have eye for design, which will be terribly noticeable during the presentation. Hobbies talked about that. Aurelia has the big logo in the middle, purple, nice, yeah. Azure, used to work for Azure before I joined Voyado, and the other one is just Microsoft Semantic Kernel, AI stuff. So, 10 awesome CSS features. Yeah, that was a lie. Apparently this is more than 10, right? So we have going to pace that fast, but you know you have to like title your talks and your blog posts like the 10 most important blah 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 because it sells. And here I am, so it worked, but it was a lie. A couple of conventions. This is what I said. I have small fonts. Can you see this in the back? Yeah. Sure. Awesome. Great. Because I cannot zoom. This is not a PowerPoint presentation, this is a website. And you can zoom websites, you say, sir. Well, yes, but it will totally ruin all the design. So that's that. As you can see, we'll time travel from 17 and forward. 17, that's a really long time ago, you say. We know all that. But maybe your colleague or someone else, the chair next to you, haven't really caught up. So it's going to be a long span. But we're going to start, not in the future, but really close in time. 2023, this was released. CSS nesting. And why do I start with that? Because you're going to be seeing it in all the examples during the talk, so we'll start with that. This used to be a big thing for SAS and LESS and other CSS frameworks. It didn't work in regular CSS until 2023. I'd say it's one of the 2 biggest parts of why the CSS frameworks got so incredibly popular, and they're still in use because quite a few developers don't know that this exists vanilla right now. Available in all the browsers, it says, which is awesome. And this presentation is available in my GitHub repo. You'll of course get the link in the end. If you download it and try it and check stuff out, then you have a small "Can I use" link here. So you can click that and check availability for everything we're going to talk about. No, wrong. remove that. There we go. So good to know. Simple nesting. An H2 within a section, and that is just going to style the H2 that is within the section. So that's the first one is outside the section. Second one within the section, and just as you expect, nice styling. Cool, scoping, awesome. Will help keep your CSS really terse and nice and pretty. Complex nesting, combined selectors, you can use ampersand, but you don't have to. For compound, you have to. Must use ampersand, otherwise it will just be combined. You know the difference between combined and compound? So you can see how it's a space between, or not. And what that dictates is specificity. CSS is all about inheriting the cascade and specificity, and div.big, that's that certain div that has the big class, and it's super specific, or rather 0, 1, 1, and it will be easier to target. You don't see that often in CSS, but it's good to know that it's there, right? That should be a really big text, but it's not. So, why is this super important? Well, say you go back to your company or your employer or your hobby project, and it's like, I'm going to change all my CSS. It's going to be super cool, just like Andreas showed me. And then customers calls, says, you broke your entire site, what happened? Well, it's obviously the CSS changed, and you ask, are you running the latest Chrome? And they'll say, yes I am. I just updated it this morning. And then you continue digging, and it turns out that the IT people have actually frozen their updates to Chrome. Andreas, is that even possible? You'll say, yes, it is. Ask me how I know. We did this. I tipped my colleagues during the fall. We changed all our CSS. The entire site went totally bananas, because browsers have no clue how to interpret nested CSS unless it's a new browser, right? So do know, some people can press update and apparently not update the browser. Really good to know. And we're going to jump to, oh, that's from the beginning. Okay, we're back to 2017, custom properties. Anyone use that? A few, not that many. Okay, this was the second biggest reason, I'd say, my interpretation, why SAS and all those other frameworks were really popular. Because having a styling system of some sort is a mess without properties, right? And now we can use them in proper CSS, declare them with --, use them with var parents. They help to keep the code dry, and good to know is they're scoped to where they're declared. Most often we declare them in root scope. That means every part of your site will have access to them. Also good to know is that they can't be used to define media queries or container queries. For example, those where we say media maximum width 800 for phone, you can't use one in there. So the question is why? That is because they're properties, they can change. Or that's going to be hard for the browser to determine if they change during the span on the screen, right? Some code. We can use color names. We can use pixels, EMs, whatever length measurement we want. We can also use already defined properties to define other properties. really sweet. You see RGB color value here, everything. Using them, just var parents and the name of the property. Styling a box, just as easy as this. And ta-da, purple box and nice shadow. Really good for design systems. Design systems, you often have at least light mode and dark mode, right? We know this. Everyone, or all the programmers at least, complain if you don't have a dark mode. So prefers color scheme dark, media query, and then within that you defined everything, all the colors or the shadows in this case, defined for dark. And if you switch over, get the green box. Super simple, right? Yes. It's really good, really good. Used to be a hassle before, right? Super simple now. Yay, go CSS. Grid. Anyone coded for web back in the Bootstrap days? Oh. Will you cry or have fond smiles when I say 12 column grid? Some of you have even like displaced it. I don't want to remember that more. But that was the origin, right, for grids and column-based layouts. Really smooth. CSS and less and those other frameworks, of course, took that paradigm with them. But there you could define your own column width, etc. Made it more flexible. We like that. We like flexible. Grid is, except for being native in CSS, as a step up, of course. Really, really nice. You can have fixed and flexible widths. You have precise placement. You can create additional tracks if you feel like it. Full control over alignment, overlappment with Z index, and my favorite, you can define areas and then name them. Then use those names, strings, to say where things should be placed instead of numbers. Basic grid is just using display grid. Bam, you have a grid. Then we're defining a couple of template columns and template rows, just the size of them. Placement is saying, for example, exist in grid column 1 and you should be from grid row 3 to 4. We can also use span. Say you start here and you span 1, 2, 3, 4. And here I think it's visible that the debate over whether CSS is a programming language or not is quite obvious here. Can you see the problem? They still haven't realized that stuff starts with 0. All enumerations start with 0, right? But here we start with 1 for columns and rows. Very bad, very bad. We can define lines. So that's just strings within brackets. That is nice because then we can place stuff between those lines. We have fractions. Everyone knows what a fraction is. Have you used a fraction? Some of you, that's cool. So say it's just, what's the best part? It's a percentage of the screen. So here we say columns 1 fraction, 3 fractions, and 1 fraction. That means those with 1 fraction should be equal size, right? And together they're 5 out of 5, so the middle part is 3 out of 5 fractions large. Auto, super nice. Say you get the space your content needs. The other ones, 1 fraction, 2 fraction, and the end, well, you can also have auto. So it's flexible. Depends on what you put in there. Repeat is super nice as well. Then you can say repeat 3, one fraction each. It'll be 3 equal grid slots, and then continue that if needed. Here we do the repeat trick. So the first 3 items, easy to see, 1, 2, 3, even spaced. What will happen to the 4th? Any guess? I've never seen so many people asleep at once before. Any guess? Yes, awesome, sir. You win a sticker. So what does this mean? 1 row CSS, and you created something you dynamically can just shove items into. It will look perfect for every item. How great is that? Super great. My favorite, named areas. You define the size still. If you want to, you probably want to, or the repeat trick, right? But then you give them string names. So what will this be? This will be a 3x3 grid, but you have the same name. Yes, that will define the entire upper one as header, header, header. All the 3 slots will combine into one. So this is one of your classical, we used to call them hourglass designs back in the good old days. Header, middle section with content, commercial, and footer with more commercials. Then for a couple of classes, you'll just tell them, or class doesn't have to be, any kind of element, class, ID. You say, you belong in the grid area, blah, blah, blah. And it will show up there. So here we have a couple of classes defined with header, left main, sidebar, and footer, those that were defined earlier. Then the markup, you see, we define footer first. What is this? Then main, sidebar, and left and header. It's all over the place. What is this? Cats and dogs are friends. And you know what? The browser will sort that out because we told it earlier that this class belongs in this area. And we'll just sort it. Super nice. Super nice. Responsive grids. Release as well. So here, exactly the same one, but we slap on a query container. It says if you go below 800 pixels, then the grid templates areas are just header, main, and footer. And we hide left and right. All those nasty commercials, gone. Show that grid. We resize it to phone size and boom. No JavaScript. You didn't have to change anything. It was just shown on the phone, 5 lines of CSS, and you have a totally new display paradigm. Nice, right? Cool. I know you'd wake up. Implicit areas. I don't use it that much. Probably good for good teams, big complex layout. But if you define lines, as we showed before, brackets, then a string within, and you call it something something start, something something end, you will end up with a template area named something something implicitly. Could be nice, yes. Could also be not so nice. I don't know. I'm still on the fence. It's not super easy to, it's like control find or stuff like that. But could be good to know. We'll do it like this. You try it out and send me an email and tell me if you like it or not. Deal? Cool. Hover media query. So it's both high and low in this presentation. I'm guessing you noticed that. I hope you weren't expecting too much of a red thread, except new CSS. You didn't like that. No. Oh! Sorry. Hover is kind of cool because in the good old days we had bad CSS but new things like phones, and everyone was like, how do we figure out if we have hover or not? Loads of hacks. Most often you could just check the viewport width and it's super small. I'm probably on a phone, but you never quite knew. Could be someone with an old computer, really 5 browsers next to each other or something, or maybe Netscape. But some people came up with a hack where you put an entire opaque layer over the entire surface, and then you listened for mouse or mouse events. Yes. So if you didn't have mouse events, you could kind of figure out after a couple of minutes that you didn't have a mouse. If you don't have a mouse, you don't have hover. Not super slick, but kind of smart. Nowadays we have it supported, just like media queries. It's at media hover, and you style for devices that have hover, or :none slapped on for devices without hover. Small example. Menu, and we have a title as well under an image. Title is always opacity 0. We can't see it unless we hover over it, then we turn the opacity to 1. But then we slap on this media query and say if that device doesn't support hover, well, always show the title. Looks like this. Oh, what a pretty menu. Oh, it's my spirit animal, the sloth. And we go over to device, or simulate a device that doesn't have hover, and you see, title is always visible. Nice, no hacks, right? Oof. CSS, math. Who likes math? That's way too many people at a developer conference that doesn't like math. Either that or you're like, oh, I'm sore today, too many stupid questions from presenters. We got calc really early, which is good. Calculate easy numbers. Then we got min, max, and then clamp. I'd say I use calc with properties. Like I've defined always have the same height on my nav bar at the top, and then I have my main window, and then I have a footer to calculate how much the main window is. Super nice to have a calc, just full height, and subtract the menu and footer size, and you have it. Clamp as a real star here. And I'd say this is underutilized right now. Really good. It takes 3 values, min, max, and the preferred one. And it's like, I'm not that bad at math. I can sort this out by hand. I don't need clamp, you think. But the sweet thing is that this can be, doesn't have to be fixed values, right? So this is really nice. Width, clamp it between 90%, 80% width, but maximum 1024 pixels. So this is a wide range. Percentage varies, right, with screen. Width as well, 80% width. For something like font size, it's really nice because you know that there's a certain font size above that. You don't want to look at the screen, it gets unbearable. Too little, and you can't see what it says, at least old people like me. So you have a sweet spot in between, but that is actually kind of flexible because you would ideally like to expand the font slightly when you have a bigger screen. Huh? Everyone's like, damn, I have a fixed font. I need to go home and fix this. Really good for that. Oh, no example, but yeah. So remember clamp. Clamp is your friend. Also good for just your main content, because you want to have a different width for really small cell phones, and then you want to have it expanding, and then you probably want the max width. Super nice. Short but good. Flex gap. Something came along with grid. It was called grid gap, and I don't know if you know that, but LA got the Blood and the Crips, two big fighting gangs, red, blue. In CSS we have the Flex gang and we have the grid gang. So they're roaming around in the hallways. You heard about the gunfight in Florbo? That was them. Flex crowd, of course, got pissed off. We want gap as well. Or sorry, grid. No, flex. So they had to battle it out. They were angry, called it flex gap, and then grid gap, and then they kind of reconciled, and now it's just gap. It works in both Flexbox and grid. I didn't cover Flexbox, but I think most of you used it, right? Yeah. If you don't know, Flexbox is really good when you want to lay out stuff over a row. As soon as you add more stuff height-wise, it's like if you get 2 rows, then swap over to grid. That's my key takeaway. Yeah, sorry? Okay. He was like, I'm Flex guy. Okay, so gap works in grid container, flex container, multi-column layout. Anyone use multi-column layout? I usually get one per conference, and it's user! Congratulations! Yeah, you can define them with, say, multi-column and then a number, and we'll split long text into several columns. It's good, right? Yeah. Gap defined. Row gap is the first value, and then column gap is the second value. If one is omitted, then it's assumed that the same value is for both. Definition actually says that if column gap is omitted, it's assumed to have the same value as row gap. I think that sounds confusing, because CSS is extremely straightforward, right? So here we define a flex container and then gap 4, 2, right? Chuck in a couple of boxes and you see the gap. And you're like, Andreas, I got margins. What is this crap? New stuff. Anyone know why gap is good? Come on. Spacing, yes. And that is margin also good for. What's the difference? No margins, yes, correct, in a way. Collapse, exactly, and also the outer ones. Gap is just in between the elements, and you can't really do that with margins and paddings. And of course they collapse depending on what kind of box you have. It's a mess, right? So gap is really good because consistent spacing within the defining box, and it doesn't shove stuff on the outside. Never. I'm fast today.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
When should I use grid and when should I use this flex container?
Sorry?
Please repeat for the video.
Oh yes. So when should I use Flexbox and when do I use
Flex container thing.
Flex container?
Yeah, that one with gaps.
Yeah. So that's just a Flexbox.
Okay.
So it's Flex container. That's just a class name. So what we used was a Flexbox. Oh, sorry. And the question was when should I use Flex container? But let's say Flexbox or grid. Flexbox, if you have designs that are only concerned of one row of items that's going to be laid out, use Flexbox. Grid is good when you start adding stuff height-wise. So you have 2 dimensions to lay out. That's my general tip. You can use Flexbox with overflow but I wouldn't recommend it. Viewport units. Anyone used to design for mobile? Back in the good old days when everything was hard and miserable? Yes, few people survived that and still around. Good, good, sir. It used to be really hard to manage mobile web pages because of the Chrome. You always tested and you used your emulator when those came around, and it's like, why does it look different on this one compared to this one? And my iPhone looks nice and this new Android looks like crap. How come? It was because we had view height to go off, and that kind of varied in between devices. And that was due to how they handled the Chrome, both top and bottom Chrome, some browsers had. So then they defined the small viewport and the large viewport, and you had to kind of figure out which one you were in. And in the beginning you couldn't even access that with JavaScript. It was a big mess. But now we have the solution, which should have been there from day one. It's dynamic viewport height, which will consider Chrome, work on all devices, and bada bing, bada boom, everything is solved. And this, my friends, is the only viewport height you should ever use, in my humble opinion. Very humble. And please, if you have more questions, feel free to ask. I gladly take them now. I'm suspecting we will have a couple of minutes at the end as well, because this is going fast today. But we'll see. Oh, CSS nesting, we did that. Mr. Cameraman totally confused me. I was focusing on being photogenic and just lost track of time and space. Container queries. Media queries, those are good, right? Anyone use them? Yes, good. It should be about the same amount of hands there as for I develop for mobile, because they should be about the same people, I guess. But media queries is really good. This is something we have been asking for a very long time in CSS. And this is, you can slap on a container query on any kind of container. Media queries was just media like device with device properties. Now all of a sudden we have the ability to check on any kind of container, be it a div, paragraph, or whatever you have designed. We used to do this with, of course, a ton of JavaScript back before. I was about to say the good old days, but this came out in 23, so it's not that long ago. You define a containment context, it's called, on any kind of container. And you tell it to be what size, or size is that way, inline size is that way, or rather typing direction, reading direction. So this is good to know, as with everything with CSS. There's a couple new things that we define with X and Y. Those are fairly set, but everything else is like inline and not inline, which means if we have RTL, like here, we read left to right, then inline size is the way of reading. But if we switch around to Japanese, is there a certain subset of Japanese? Anyways, there's some ways you read from top to bottom, right? And that would mean inline size all of a sudden is that way. And if you base your entire design around this, it can go sideways. Oh well, I tried. Setting up container cards. Container type, inline size, right? We say that our cards are 30% width of screen, or total container, sorry. We have big cards as well. They're bigger, they're twice as big, 60%. The markup looks like this. That card container with the container query. Slap in a couple of cards. They have a header, some lorem ipsum, and the big cards also have an info paragraph at the end. Then we add the container query. We say that when you get smaller than 1200 pics, then big cards should also be 30%. And why not add it container query to the big cards as well? That says that, well, if you go below 400 pixels, then remove the info because you won't have space. Looks like this. And oh, that was really small, not intended, sorry. There we go. So width is now 1128, and the big cards are shrunk from 60% to 30, and you see the info is gone. Cool, right? So, container queries, really nice, because this means that when we start breaking apart all our designs to individual components, those components can now own their own styling completely. I can restyle when I think my box, my spacing is getting too small. I will remove all the ads or all the content, depending if you want to earn money or not, but you get the drift. Really good.
I have another question.
Yes, question, please.
Why is that not possible with ordinary media query?
Media query, you can, the only thing, oh, sorry. To repeat the question, why is this not possible with media queries? But the media query, you will get device properties. You can see that the screen is smaller than something, but you cannot slap on a media query on a div, because you will only get phone size or screen size from the screen, for example, if you're looking at width. So with container query means you can do the same thing, same thinking, but actually in any kind of container, be it a div, some class, an ID. Scroll snap. How old are you? Did you hear snap? Rhythm is a dancer. Can you perform it, sir? No. Oh, good old times. About the same time as jQuery and before Bootstrap even, right? Yeah. Scroll snap. Really nice. Also something we used JavaScript for. A couple of years ago, I know I coded my own JavaScript solution for this, and it was neither fun nor pretty. So this is really nice. You can set direction and snap attach position to elements. So you can snap top, middle, really cool. Strictness is also nice, that if you want to enforce snapping really, really hard, or just say, well, if the end of the article gets kind of close to the border, you might snap it if you feel like it. So, JavaScript in the good old days. This came out full support in 23, so it's 2 years ago, but still, yeah. Time moves fast in computer science, right? Mandatory means we always snap for snap modes. Proximity mode is how strict we want to be, or rather if we want to be less strict. Do note that if you have content that is overflowing the viewport, it's like a big article, it's a bit bigger than the screen, you have mandatory snapping. That means it will totally snap to the other part, and when you try to scroll it, you can scroll it, but as soon as you release, it will snap back. Direction, X, Y, or you can actually have both. Really cool. Never tried that. Email me, tell me how it goes if you try it. Scroll snap align is how or which part of the element you're snapping do you want to snap to. Start, center, end, or none. Don't ask me why none exists, but it's fun. So here we have a card container and a couple of cards in it, and those cards vary between start, center, end, and none. It actually says in the middle here. And the scroll type up here is y-axis. So here you see, finally we have X and Y appearing in some modern properties. It took until 23 until we started thinking about X and Y axis in the browser. So let's see how it works. Can just focus on that element and use spacebar or arrow. So first one, top, well, it doesn't have anything above it, doesn't have any option. If I scroll slightly, you see the middle element will attach its center to the center of the viewport. And the viewport is just this height. And you see the small thin line here. I don't know if you saw that over here as well, but I have redesigned the scroll bars in the presentation. So this is just a web page, but I said that in the beginning, right? You can nowadays you can change the scroll bars because Battleship Grey isn't that pretty, it turns out. Center, bottom, that one attaches the bottom to the bottom of the container, and so on. Top, center, you get the drift. And you see a couple of ones scroll by really fast here, right? I'll see if I can drag that. Sorry. And those are defined as none. So they come on. So they just zoom by and refuse to snap. There was one more. Isn't that kind of weird? I don't know when you want to use that at all. Legal text, like that agreement, user agreement at the end, right? Here, checkbox, snap done. There you go. Very good, sir. Very good. Oops. Come on. Sorry. Here we go. Just a few. Scroll-based animation. So, also something we used to do with huge JavaScript frameworks. We have two versions now: scroll progress timeline and view progress timeline. So one of them is tied to the scroll bar, this one, at any given container, or the other one is tied to where an element is within the viewport. Good to know. You can set the animation timeline to root, which is the outer root, nearest element, or myself. And you have the regular what direction. So we define a small block and we transform it from half size to full size, depending on where it is. You set up the animation. This is the animated block, and this animation name was the block row that we defined here. And we set the scroll to the nearest one. Block size, height-wise. Timing function, the end result is this. So now it's really hard to see it's almost impossible to see this, but you see the scroll bar here? I should make that wider, I guess. I'm sorry about that. But this block is traveling up and down the view frame, and we bound that and triggered the keyframe. Anyone used keyframe for animations? Ooh, you should check that out. It's really cool. View progress timeline is bigger, bound to the outer scroll timeline name, and animation timeline. We set it up, and here we define an animation that we call reading bar. It's from a very dim color to a bright color, 0% width to 100% width. We set that scroll timeline name on some outer element and define the progress bar with the animation, and the result is top side. Did you see it appear? So that was the classical, you have read this far in this blog article that used to cost 1 megabyte of JavaScript a couple of years ago. Just a little CSS. Subgrid. So we went over grid. Problem is, if I want to shove in 4 small articles in one of my bigger grid boxes, there used to be a mess before because you couldn't align properly within that grid. And lots of talk about AI. I tried to use AI to visualize this. Give me 16 boxes, 4 high, 4 vertical, 4 horizontal. The 4 in the lower should be purple and glowing. And it gave me this. And also an attack helicopter plane. So thank you very much for that. I tried again and got this, but we can play with this. So subgrid would be defining that part. And the problem is chucking 4 other elements in there and keeping to the original grid. So we just define a grid and then another grid. And then we say grid template columns, the ones that defined grids before, remember? We say subgrid and subgrid for rows. That means keep within the parent. We chuck in a lot of stuff, and what I should show is that the first outer ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and then we define the subgrid. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 still wraps around and understands that we have defined the subgrid where we could insert those other new items, right? These ones. Really handy when you work with grids. Then 2 minutes. Okay, color functions. We just got a slew of new color functions, which is really cool. And they take different positions within the color spectra. Who knew that there were so many colors? I don't have a good screen. We can define a couple of gradients here in a couple of different ones here, and they'll look different. And the reason is that gradients travel over the color wheel. Different color functions have different color wheels. Know this when you exit this lecture today, because that's going to be important. I'll skip light dark. It's a really cool one. With that, I hope you went from this to this. Thank you very much for coming. Here you have a couple of ones. The far right one, I think, is rate me, rate this session. Tell me what other cool stuff I need to bring into my session to make it better. Any kind of feedback would be highly appreciated. Thank you in advance. The other one is for the repository to get the code so you can check it out. And the first one, I think, is my LinkedIn. Connect and let's talk web on the web. Yay. Thank you.
You made it. Det var bra.